you guys talk a lot about private investors, and these people are just sitting around with all this money and just giving it to you. Where do you find these people?
Let's just say unit 1 makes 1,100, unit 2 makes 1,000, total 2,100. Is that more or less than the 1% rule of this $200,000 property? Yes. It's potentially going to make you cash flow.
They want money to work for them, right? So how do I get started? I'm busy in my W-2 job. I don't want to deal with tenants. I don't want to manage it, right?
No, I just want the money.
I just want the money.
I just want to make money. So teach me how.
Welcome back to the Sky's the Limit podcast with Mike and Ryan. I'm Ryan. Today we are back with Ashlee with Capture the Concept. She is back for part 2. This is going to be the how do you purchase your first rental property. In part 1, we talked about how to buy a primary house, but she's back because she's an aspiring real estate investor after listening to so many podcasts with Mike and I. And so she's ready to buy her first rental. So I wanted to get right into it. Ashlee, how are you? What's going on
Welcome
since
back.
the last time?
Thanks, guys. Haven't seen you in so long.
I know, right?
Yeah, let's get right into it. I mean, I think maybe we played a little bit of part in this, right? Like,
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Like maybe we inspired you to potentially buy your first rental, and you have us here to just sort of fire questions at. So I want to know like what your questions are, like, where you're at with maybe buying something somewhat soon with your husband, Joe, who does such a great job on our podcast.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, so when I listen to you guys talk every week, you're talking about the deep pieces of investing and ways to make the most money and how to acquire your properties. But I kind of want to go back to the beginning. I don't really know yet where to start. So for all your listeners that have been writing in and asking where to start, let's try to cover that. So I work, we own this production business and that's our full-time job. But it sounds like I could probably invest on the side, right? I can have some income flowing in. I can get myself a property manager that's managing everything. So all I have to do is, I think, put up upfront cash, buy the property, get some tenants in there and just kind of let it flow. So A, tell me if that's accurate. And B, where do I even begin? Like, do I call Mike first? Do I call Ryan first? What kind of money do I have to have in the account? Like, what's the plan?
I think that's what's so cool about real estate is that there's so many, it fits so many people's criteria. So Ryan and I, for example, we want to build this behemoth of a portfolio of commercial and mixed use property and multifamily and apartment buildings. And that's other people as well. Some people love to syndicate, which is where they're raising all this private capital and they're, have a 5-year exit plan. But you love your job. And maybe this applies to any doctors or any other W-2 worker that loves their job. They don't have these big aspirations, but they see the merits of real estate investing and they maybe want it to be a pension for them when they retire one day and they want money to work for them, right? So someone like yourself, it's like, okay, how do I get started? I'm busy in my W-2 job. I don't want to deal with tenants. I don't want to manage it, right?
No, I just want the money.
I just want the money.
I just want to make money. So teach me how.
First step is you're definitely going to need, so you're not going to live in the property.
No.
So
I don't want to live there. I have a fine
you
house.
you like your house. You just want a little side hustle. So you're going to need at least 20 to 25% down to put down on a property. This could be a single family house. This could be a commercial building. This could be a multifamily 2 to 4 units. You're going to, because you're not living in it, you are going to need 20 to 25% down. Bottom line.
Okay. Pause. So first of all, which one makes me more money? Typically. Obviously,
that's a loaded question.
I would think commercial because there's more spots.
Not
most
always.
Of the time, but is there something that I should potentially go for first? I know this is a debate
It's a good
per
question.
previous episode, but
It's like, what flavor lollipop do you like the most? It really just depends on. It depends on a lot of things.
It does. I for a first time investor, you should stick to 1 to 4 unit properties.
Okay.
I don't know.
There's less moving parts.
There's so many less moving parts. I mean, on a commercial property, if it's like of any substantial size, like you could be like rocking and rolling, right? Like you're in month 6 and you're like, the money's coming in. You're like, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the flat rubber roof goes and it's 50 grand and you just wiped your cash out for like 3 years. Like there's just commercial properties, they just tend to be more expensive.
Okay.
I think the way to answer this question is you really have to be a doctor and ask a lot of questions like, what are your goals? So when I ask a client, people are like, oh, I want a multifamily property and I want a cash flow. I'm like, okay, well, where do you want to start? So how much do you think is good cash flow? I'll start there. Like, how much cash flow do you think you want to generate a month? Passive.
Reverse engineer it.
Okay, so the cash flow is the money that I'm going to make after like all of the property's
Mortgage,
bills are paid.
interest, expenses, your property manager, everything. Like, what is left over? How much would you be happy with?
I want like 1,000 to 3,000 extra a month.
A month?
Yeah.
That you want a unicorn.
Okay.
They don't exist. Not in this market right now.
So what's average then?
Every month is different, but in a normal one single family or up to 4 units in a good right now, probably a couple $100s a month is realistic. Now you're going to find the one-offs that are going to produce 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe even $1,000. But with rates where they're at right now, you would be lucky when the inventory is low as it is right now. And this won't be forever. I would be really happy with like $300 to $500 a month.
Okay.
So let me.
I think it's perception. Like people think cash flow is like
Lots.
thousands of dollars a month, and it's. I mean, maybe in other parts of the country it is. At least in our market in New England, it's going like it's not. You're just not getting that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's totally correct. Like I think we have to talk about where we're at, like location wise. So we're in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Sort of a more expensive market. Like it depends where you're at in the country. Like if you're planning on buying around here, I assume.
Yeah.
Like I have a client, upstate New York, where what you just said is possible. Okay, like getting 1,000 or 2 a month. It's a cheaper property. You're probably not going to see the appreciation that you would see here if you run the property right and take care of it. Like that property or those properties up there, like that are super cheap, like they're probably going to stay like in that price range. You know, like they're not going to be like year over year appreciate, but you'll get the cash flow. But around here, it's like you kind of get less cash flow, but you will get some appreciation. So it does matter where you're at in the country. It really does.
Okay, so then the way I take that from my own perspective of I'm going to do this because I'm going to make a couple extra $1,000 a month, then maybe I need to buy cheaper properties in like maybe not so expensive areas so that I can have more of them.
Yes, you could do that
to get more money in.
So you don't care about the property appreciating?
I mean, I don't plan to like flip anything. I don't know anything about what you guys do, so I just want to buy something.
Your primary objective is monthly cash flow.
Right.
And you don't care where it comes from in the country. You just want the cash flow to come in.
Mm-hmm.
So in that instance, out-of-state investing is a really good option for you.
But is that scary to like buy something out of state and then have to get a property manager that's local that I don't have any, like, I still own it?
Again, it comes down to what's most important to you. For me, I don't know about you, Ryan, but for me, I don't own any out-of-state property because I physically want to be there, touch it, and I'm a phone call away. So maybe a 2-hour driving distance is my preference.
Okay.
I know a lot of clients who are investing from California in Connecticut. I have a listing now in Bristol, Connecticut. The guy lives in California. I mean, he probably flew to see it during inspection, and then he manages it from California. You don't have to live that close, but that's his preference. He cash flows really well. But it all comes down to what's like your preference and what are you comfortable with. So
okay.
So as real estate investors, my personal opinion is that like for the most part, you really don't need to be checking on the property every day. Like if you come up into the area, you want to drive by your property and make sure it's looking good, that's fine. But you really don't need to be super close, is my opinion. Like we were just talking about this.
Yeah.
Like, you haven't seen like one of your properties in like 9 months. It doesn't matter.
I have a property, a 3-unit in New Britain, Connecticut. It's probably 5 miles from where we're sitting right now. I haven't been there in 9 months. I have a property manager and he takes care of everything. But why can't I find that same type of caliber of a property manager in Oklahoma, in Missouri, in Alabama, in Florida, in New York, where I don't have to be, right? To your point. So now it's like, shit, what are we doing wrong? I know. I mean, absolutely. You're absolutely right. You just have to, I think the most important part is if you're investing out of state, you have to have a team that you can trust.
1,000%.
Maybe that comes from one property manager who has the resources, or if you're going to self-manage, you have to build that team yourself. But there is, without a doubt, better cash flow in other parts of this country that's not Connecticut.
Okay. Good to know.
So
Okay. So say then I decide that I want to buy like a 2 to 4 unit property locally. And I can expect to make I'll plan for $500 extra a month after everything's covered. What do I do first? Do I call Mike and say, start looking for these things? Do I call Ryan and say, like, how much money do I need to have to prepare for that?
Yeah, I think it's important to sort of get pre-approved, so to speak.
Just like
first.
with buying your first house.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, because you don't want to be shopping out of your price range.
True.
You know,
an agent probably won't even start showing you a property until you're pre-qualified.
So just like buying the
They
first.
don't want to waste your time. And they certainly don't want to waste their time.
Okay. So now I'm pre-approved for what? Like,
so you
what
gotta
is the general
so you got to find a
price?
lender.
Yeah, but what's the general price for like a 2 to 4 family around here? I know town differs, but
It depends on the
time.
condition, depends on the town. But let's just say Hartford County,
sure.
and it's a 3-unit building, and we'll call it turnkey. It doesn't really need that much. All the units have been renovated.
Yeah.
The boilers are 10 years or newer. The roof is in good shape. You don't really, you can acquire it and not have to expect to dump a lot of what we call CapEx, capital expenditure, into that property. A 3-unit would probably go for anywhere between $300,000 to $350,000 in Hartford County. I'd say it's a pretty good ballpark figure.
Okay.
And you're going to need 20 to 25% down on that purchase price.
Got it.
You almost want to just start there. Like
Okay.
if you're working in an area where it's like $100,000 a unit and you want a triplex and it's 300,000, 20% of that's 60,000. Like, do you have $60,000? Like, yes or no?
Right.
Because if you don't, then I don't know. Like, you just gotta maybe back your numbers down. Like, buy
Okay.
something cheaper, find someone to give you that money and make it work with your lender, because there's a lot of caveats with that too. It's not so easy. Just be like, hey, mom and dad, like, can I borrow 50 G's? And it's just not that easy.
So, on that topic, you guys talk a lot about private investors, and these people are just sitting around with all this money and just giving it to you. Where do you find these people?
Yeah.
Just giving to you with quite a heavy fee.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
No, but like, how does that work? Because maybe that's the way to do it. Maybe that's the way, because it sounds like with how we learned about the 1031 exchange and being able to roll that, like, it sounds to me, based on past episodes, that once you get your first property, that will help you kind of start to scale.
It'll certainly put the groundwork forward. You can start it, get your foot in the door. It's like everyone thinks I'm going to buy this house and something bad's going to happen. The house doesn't fall down right away, right? Mm-hmm. So you get your house, and typically what happens is you put that 20% down and now you're out of money. So to your point, private lenders, there's private lenders, which would be like maybe a really close family member, or maybe, a lot of attorneys do private lending. An attorney we use a lot does do private lending. But they have to trust you, and you typically have to have a track record. No one's just going to lend you private money on your first investment purchase. Like, what do you have to show for it? How do I know I'm going to make my money back? So if that's the case, which it is for a lot of people, maybe you can do what's called a joint venture. So maybe this is where that private lender is super busy. They're a high income earner, but you have some time. You don't plan to have these crazy aspirations, but you have to build a huge portfolio, but you have the time to go find the lender, or to go find a lender to give you the mortgage, and you found the agent, and you're going on the showings and you're running the numbers, and then all that takes time. And then now you have to put the 20% down. So now you go to your friend and you say, hey, why don't you come in on this deal? I'll put a little bit of my own money, but you put a lot of that 20% down, and I'll manage this property, or I'll manage the manager of it. And so that's called maybe a joint venture. Maybe you guys create an LLC together where you're both, 50-50, or you can split it up. If LLC does not have to be 50-50. It could be, maybe they're 70% owner and you're 30%. Maybe they put 70% of the capital down of that 20% and you put 30%. And now you're into this deal. You don't have full ownership, but you have 30% of, something. And at the end of the day, hopefully that appreciates and you sell that and you make even more money. So that's how you can probably get into a deal where if you don't have 20% down, but you have someone who you get along with and kind of does, you're the boots on the ground. They want to be passive in the background, and you can both come into a deal. So that's one way. You can do it with multiple people. It's called the joint venture. So there's a lot of different ways you can structure that deal.
Is that how you guys got your first property? Because you mentioned this kind of.
Our
Wilcox
at least
Street.
my fourth property is when I ran out of money, and that's when I met Ryan, and we found this 4-family off market. It was a really good deal. We both knew it was a good deal, but we both had a track record. So we had both not touched anyone else's money. We both had invested all of our own capital. We found this deal. I think it was like a 4-unit for $225,000 or something.
Something like that. Yep.
And we reached out to this gentleman who had seen our track record and we, hey, listen, we know this is a good deal. Do you want to make some money? And so a way for a private lender to make money by not having any ownership is through interest, and it's through points. So hard money lenders or private lenders typically charge points on a purchase. So if you're buying a $100,000 house, they're going to charge you 2 to 3 points. 1 point is 1% of the purchase amount. So if they're charging you 2 points on $100,000, that's $2,000 you pay them upfront.
Oh,
right away.
Upfront.
Right away at the closing table.
Right.
In addition to that, so that's like money in their pocket. They give you $100,000, and at the closing, you give them $2,000 back, essentially.
Right.
They're also going to charge you interest, typically 10 to 12%. So if you have a $100,000 house and you didn't put any of your own money into it, 10% on $100,000 is $10,000, $12,000 a year, $10,000, $10,000. I'm thinking 12 months, $10,000 a year. That's a little less than $1,000 a month you got to pay them. But if you have rent coming in, that's okay.
You should be clearing that amount. That's a really good point. I mean, I would say as a first timer looking for your first property, I would not plan on somebody giving you the money and not joint venturing and not wanting a piece of that equity, which is what he just described. I think that's a really good play. Unless you have unless you have a family member that's all right, Ashlee, I trust you. I've known you for so long. I'm going to give you this money. That's different. But if it's just a guy that maybe from your capture the concept day, maybe you just know them as a client, that's going to be probably more of a joint venture thing. That's a really good way to get into it.
It's hey, I found this really good deal. I think you should come in on it with me.
Okay.
Okay, well, how much money do you need? How much equity am I going to get? Those are the questions that you can have or you can ask.
Okay, I have a kind of different question, and I don't know if it counts. So we talked about
It
how
definitely does not count.
we talked about how my husband Joe bought our house, right? When we were buying, before we were married. So I'm not on it. He did the first time home buyers. Can I do a first time home buyers on a property like this that I'm going to invest in if I bought it under my name?
So you can do that, but you have to occupy the property, which is what you said you didn't want to do.
Oh, you have to house hack in
Right.
that situation.
Yeah. So you need to live in there for a year is the rule.
Got it.
So if you and Joe, or
If
you
you wanna
want to leave Joe in the dust and go
Just
live
move
in the
out for a
property,
year.
then that's
That's if you're
doable.
putting less than 20% down. That's what the law says.
Because that's why you would do a first time home buyer, right?
The government,
An FHA
Fannie and Freddie conventional loans or FHA loans, they're giving you, they're putting more money of their government money on the table, and their requirement is, I want to help you out as a home buyer, but you have to live in that. I'm not just going to let any investor put 5 to 10% down, and they're not even going to live in it. Everyone would do that.
Right.
Everyone would do that.
Okay.
So if you don't, it's technically mortgage fraud.
Because they see it as okay, this person's going to live there. My risk is less, right? Because they're going to live there. It's their primary home because it would become your primary home, just like your house with Joe. This is now your new house. And they see it as you're going to take better care of it. So okay, we'll give her a break on the down payment. This is going to be your house. This is what we're going to do.
But
Got
to
it.
answer your question, if you live with Joe now and you're not, and you didn't put that in your name, so there's nothing stopping you from going and buying a house, single family to 4 units, and putting a 3.5% or 5% down now, effective November 18th, on a 1 to 4 unit property, and you can do that, and the government will allow you to put a very little amount down.
Why all of a sudden?
Well, you've always been able to do 3.5%. Effective November 18th, Fannie and Freddie, which are the government agencies, they are coming out with a new law now that says if you're going to own or occupy one of these houses, 2 to 4 units, a multifamily, you can put 5% down as a conventional loan. The conventional loan, that's the difference. You always have to put 20 to 25% if it's conventional, but now you can put 5%, but you have to own or occupy it.
Okay.
And if you don't, it's mortgage fraud.
Got it. So if I don't plan to live there, it's 20%, bottom line.
Correct.
So here's something that I know a lot of people ask about the FHA loan thing. You can have more than one FHA loan. You just can't have more than one outstanding at one time. So let's just say Joe, your husband, bought your house with an FHA loan. If he sells the property, right, so no more loan, he can now get another FHA loan. If he stays in the property and refinances it to something other than an FHA loan, he can get another FHA loan. So like, it's not like one in your lifetime. It's just like one outstanding at one particular
Big,
time.
huge. Everyone gets that really confused. So a creative way is, let's say Joe did use an FHA loan to buy the house you both live in now, and you're like, Joe, I think we should be smart and we should go buy a multifamily, but we don't have 20% down. Why don't me, Ashlee, put 3.5 or 5% down on a 2 to 4 unit, and I'll live there for one year, live there for 1 year. And that way there you've now acquired a 2 to 4 unit with very little capital down.
So here's another thing that you and Joe could do.
You should live there though.
If you don't want to leave Joe in the dust in your current house, like you guys could refinance right out of the FHA loan,
Yep.
cash out refi, because you guys have had the house for a number of years. You've been paying the mortgage down, building equity. You can do a cash out refi into a non-FHA loan, right? Keep the property, hold it as a rental, and you guys go buy another house via FHA.
Okay.
That's an option.
That is an option.
Okay.
Super
So
smart.
Yeah.
there's a lot of options. Okay.
But can I just, before you,
Keep going.
so here's one thing, and I'll bring this up because I know you guys. You both, and this is amazing, don't get me wrong, because Michael and I did the same thing, but you left your full-time 9-to-5 corporate jobs.
Right.
Corporate dropouts.
Banks love people with 9-to-5 jobs. They love it. They
course.
eat it up.
Of course.
As soon as you leave that and now you're like an entrepreneur, which is super cool to us, not super cool to banks, it's going to be tricky. It's
Tricky
gonna-
how? Like a no-go?
Because they want to see consistent income.
2 years.
Yeah.
1099 income, 2 years.
Yeah,
That's the number.
They want to see consistent income. It's all about risk, right? If they see this person's been at a job for 10 years, they're making X amount every month, look at all this history they have, and now you up and leave, and now you have a job where, sure, you're doing fine at, right? You guys are doing well, but like is it consistent every bi-weekly paychecks? Not really.
No.
Right? It's you guys are hustling and grinding and you're making money, but like they want to see consistent paychecks. So that's going to make it, it's not impossible. It's going to make it a lot harder.
But if I have money sitting in the bank that shows that I'm kind of good for it, right?
It's more than that.
That wouldn't
They
help
need
either,
more
huh?
than that.
It's easier to get $500,000 in student debt than it is to buy a $200,000 mortgage. That's what's disgusting about our government.
Yeah.
It really is. It's so much easier to go into $100,000 of student debt with no guarantee of a job, but I'm going to send you to college for 4 years and you're going to be poor, versus someone who actually can show 8 months, 9 months, 12 months, 15 months of constant income and has $100,000 in the bank. Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Good to know.
Another way to, you guys have this beautiful house. Let's say you have, instead of doing a cash out refinance, which let's say you bought during COVID or, 2020, 2021, and you have a really low interest rate. When you do a cash out refinance, you refinance the property. So you're going to get a new rate at today's rate, which is 7.5. Let's say you don't want to give that up, but you're like, shit, we're sitting on $100,000, $200,000 of equity because we bought in 2020 and our house is appreciated, which it probably has. Guarantee it has.
It did.
You can do what's called a HELOC, line of credit, home equity line of credit, where you're basically, the bank's going to send out an appraiser and they say, okay, you owe $200,000, but your house is worth $400,000. We're going to give you up to 70% of that value, and you're going to get it in the form of a line of credit. and you don't touch your current mortgage payment. You just start, now you got access to capital and you use that as a down payment on another investment property. You still live in your house, and now you can go buy another multifamily or investment property, or honestly, whatever you want with the HELOC. You can do whatever you want with
Yeah,
it.
that's a really good point. So HELOCs on owner-occupied properties have actually pretty high loan to values. So like you can likely get even, I've heard of even 100%, which is insane, which means like if you had a $400,000 house in this example, like they would give you up to a $400,000 loan less what you owe. So in this example where you owe 200, but your house is worth 400, let's just say you can probably get 90% loan to value, which means if it's worth 400 at 90%, that's 360,000. You owe 200, you could potentially get the difference between 360 and 200, which is 160. You could then take that money and buy something. And it's a secured line of credit because it's borrowed against your house. So it's going to be a fair interest rate.
We should do a YouTube video on that.
We absolutely
Let's
should.
do a YouTube video on that.
Sure.
For all the listeners out there, we're going to do a YouTube video on that. Hold us accountable. And we're going to show you how you can pull out a HELOC or line of credit from your primary residence. Can't be from an investment property, but from your primary residence, and how you can use that to then use that money to go buy another multifamily or investment property.
Yeah,
Let's do a YouTube video
definitely.
on it.
I think that would be
And breaking
helpful.
down the numbers, because it's hard to do right here.
Yeah.
But I think if you can visualize it, it'll be a lot easier. So
Okay.
we'll definitely do that.
I'll add it to the schedule.
I know before we even started recording, you asked about like, how do you run numbers? How do you make sure it's a good investment? So I kind of want to touch on that if that's all right.
Definitely.
Unless you have another question.
No. I mean, this was helpful to know because there's so many ways. Because when we first started talking, I was like, well, I'm out. But it sounds like there's a lot of ways to actually make it happen if it's something that you want to do. So, okay, let's say I do find a 2 to 4 unit for 400.
Yeah, let's say 4 units for 400 grand.
Okay.
Very doable in this market.
Okay. How do I know what my down payment is? And then in our last episode where we talked about buying a house, you guys hit me with like 10 grand of extra spending. So is there I'm sure that's going to come up. So let's
Still
go through
gonna
all
have
that. Okay.
Yeah, you're still going to have that. So first question to ask yourself, am I going to live in the property?
No.
So I need 20 to 25% down.
Plus closing costs.
No ifs, ands, or buts. I'm going to need 20% down to buy this $400,000 house because I'm not going to live in it.
Why do you say 20 to 25? Where's that range come from?
It's just an industry standard.
Every bank is going to be like, based on your credit, we could do what's called 80% loan to value. So the difference is 20% down, or 75% loan to value, 25% down.
So I don't get
Some
to
banks
pick.
might even say 30% down.
I don't get to pick then.
No.
You could pick your bank, but most banks are going to be 20 to 25%.
Got it.
Absolutely,
That makes
no
sense.
question.
There's no bank that I know of that if you're not going to live in the property, maybe DSCR loans.
No, it's the same.
Same. Okay. Yeah. So 20% thinking in
Got
your
it.
head. I'm not going to live in
least.
it. I need 20% down.
Okay.
So
Got it.
That's,
Don't forget closing costs.
Right. Which are the
We talked about that on part one.
same-ish. So would it really generally be the same as buying can I figure that 10-ish
For the most
grand?
part. For
Okay.
the most part.
the things that are going to make your closing costs more expensive on a more expensive property is the taxes you're escrowing. The insurance may be more. So when you close a property on your HUD sheet, they call it at the closing table, the lender, the bank you're going to use, is going to require most likely that you prepay taxes and insurance. You don't have to prepay them for the entire year, but they want to see 6 months paid up front. So if you're buying a $500,000 house in West Hartford, Connecticut, and the taxes are 20 grand, which is realistic, honestly, $10,000 right off the bat is going towards your taxes. Now you have to pay them anyways, but they're just making you prepay that, so that when they send you your monthly principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, it's already escrowed in there.
Got it.
Additionally, you have to prepay sometimes a year insurance.
Usually a year.
Usually a year. So on a $500,000 house, and a multifamily is going to be even more expensive. So 4 units insurance right now, it's probably like 35 to 4 grand for insurance. You got to pay that up front too. So you got 10,000 for taxes, and you got another 4,000 for insurance.
So those are items that you would pay anyways.
Okay.
But that's in
That's
addition to all
14
those other closing costs we already talked about.
It's 14 grand just in those 2 items. Now you have your attorney fee, you got lender's fees, potentially broker fees,
Title fees.
Okay. So I'm at 20% plus potentially like 20,000 more.
Correct.
Right?
So on a $500,000 house, you're at $100,000 all day.
plus closing costs, plus another 20 in closing.
So why do people do this? Like, why? Right? Like, how is it gonna help me in the future? Like, that's a lot of money to put up front to have other people live in this house, and then to have people potentially make a mess or whatever, and I'm only making $500 a month. Is it for the resale or?
We should touch on that. I'm glad you asked that. So like, real estate is more than just like mailbox money, right? Like your tenants pay, like it's more than that.
Okay.
So like, there's a lot of good things. So you get to every year depreciate on your taxes the property. So in a 1 to 4 unit over 27 and a half years, you get to depreciate that property. So if you have a $500,000 house divided by 27.5, that's how much you get to depreciate the property. Now, do you think that your property is depreciating or appreciating every year?
Appreciating.
So how crazy is that? You get to depreciate your property on your taxes, which means you get to take off from the top that number every year. So if you're making 100,000, your rental property earned 100,000, which is a lot, but like you're going to take off that depreciation off the top, but you know full well that your property has appreciated throughout the year.
And that happens while you sleep and your tenants are paying down your mortgage. So even if you broke even every month, you weren't making 500 grand, you're hopefully not coming out of pocket to have this investment. And that's why like your money is working for you. You're not in every other job that's active, you're working for money. In real estate, in passive real estate, money is working for you. That mortgage is getting paid down every month, whether you show up there or not, if you manage your tenants correctly. You're getting depreciation every calendar tax year as long as you own the property. And in a good market, you're getting appreciation every year. You're not doing a damn thing. So you have so many, and not only that, there's expenses with owning rental properties.
Mm-hmm.
You can write those expenses off.
So it's really good for taxes.
So you have so many different buckets, which we should do another YouTube video on all the buckets.
Write it down.
Write it down.
Okay.
Add it to the schedule.
So you could see why, yes, you could put 120 grand instead of going and buying a 4 unit in the market. Who knows if it's going to go up or down? Historically speaking, it should go up about 8% annualized, but who knows?
Right.
If you are in near retirement and you can't be aggressive and you don't, your time clock, you don't have that time to lose money, then maybe a multifamily property is for you. Also, think about this: in 20 years, 30 years, the thing's paid off, and now it's just cash flow. You got your taxes and insurance and landscaping, but
so basically, you get to work at Capture the Concept, right? You get to do whatever you guys are doing, produce this awesome podcast, and in the background, you get all these tax benefits. You get this mailbox money. You get all these things, and you don't have to trade your time for money. That's really the thing.
it's scalable.
Okay. So when you guys are like looking at properties to potentially purchase or whatever, do you like sit down and run numbers together? Like, how do you go through all of this?
I have a very rudimentary tactic, we'll call it.
Okay.
That I used to do. I still do it when I first started out. So the 1% rule.
Yep.
This could not be simpler. Let's just say you found a duplex. It's $200,000.
Sure.
The 1% rule says that 1% of the purchase price of this $200,000 property is $2,000. Does the property earn more gross than $2,000? Let's just say unit 1 makes $1,100, unit 2 makes $1,000, total $2,100. Is that more or less than the 1% rule of this $200,000 property? Yes. It's potentially going to make you cash flow. So when you're like sifting through deals, like your agent is sending you all this stuff and you see a couple rent rolls versus purchase prices, this is a super quick rule to sort of like swipe left, swipe right on these properties.
Got it.
Back in the napkin, quick table scratch.
Okay.
Takes you 5 seconds.
To see if it's even worth thinking
Don't
about.
even waste your time. If it's not meeting the 1% rule, don't even waste your time.
Got it. Okay. That's cool. Okay.
So a 3-family in Hartford County goes for $300,000. I don't want to even think about it if it's not doing a 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 3,000, 300,000, 3,000 a month in rental, $300,000 in purchase. Its numbers are going to be tight because you have a lot of expenses, but it passes that 1% rule. Now let me go see what the rents could be. Maybe they're below market.
Right.
And it's an art and a science, because just because it doesn't meet the 1% rule doesn't mean it's a bad investment, because you as a sophisticated investor, how's the bourbon, could raise those rents. You know what a 2-bedroom goes for. Wow, it's rented for $800. I know that's worth $1,400 all day long. Let me see what kind of lease they're on. Are they locked into a year lease? Do I have to wait a year to raise their rent? Oh, I might pass on that one. Are they month to month? All I have to do is give them 30 days notice. Will they get out in 30 days? Maybe not, probably not. But I can at least let them know. Maybe it takes 60 days and then I can get a market rent. So these are all the things that go into it.
Okay. So because you guys are doing this podcast, and obviously your episodes are helpful, Mike, you had mentioned that it doesn't like cost anything to talk to a real estate agent and whatever.
Unfortunately.
I know. But I'm just thinking, like, if your audience has questions, like, do you guys talk to people about this kind of stuff? Or can they can you consult people? Do you have like documents that tell people how to where to get started? I'm not going to remember all of the steps. So would that be something you could help with?
We can send, we have one-off PDF flyers created. We have our Excel sheet, how we run numbers. And if any of the listeners are interested, you could visit our website. We'll grab your email from it and we'll send you an email with whatever you want, whether it's an Excel sheet of our spreadsheet or it's a how-to guide. We have a lot of information. So
cool.
If you're interested, it's www.skytree.com/podcast.
Oh.
And
since when did that get set up? That's cool.
Yeah,
okay.
pretty cool. So a lot of value-add information.
SkyTreeInvestments.com.
Oh yeah, SkyTreeInvestments.com.
/podcast.
Everybody's drinks are doing really well tonight.
What do you got today?
I have red wine. Cabernet is my fave.
Yeah.
I can't drink bourbon like you guys.
I know. I usually do a cube because
hey, you did well today.
I did well.
That's good.
You're growing up.
www.skytreeinvestments.com/podcasts. Get your email. We'll send you answer any questions you have, and obviously get you the one PDF pagers and Excel spreadsheets. So
this will be the actual Excel sheet that we use to analyze.
Yeah.
So what kind of stuff is on this Excel sheet? What?
Literally, you're plugging in the purchase price, what rents you're getting. You'll need to know what it costs for utilities. But other than that, it pretty much
the formulas are the
itself.
same.
Oh, it has formulas in it and everything
so
too?
it's it'll have the things you don't want to touch, how it does the calculation. But I mean, we're not Excel wizards. I don't even know how to do a pivot table, which apparently a lot of people know how to do.
I don't know how to do that.
Oh, you don't know? Okay.
No.
It's a very basic Excel sheet, but it takes 3 minutes to analyze a property, and it's just a quick how-to. Yeah,
cool.
It's easy.
This was helpful, and I think breaking down different pieces of what you guys kind of taught me today and taught the listeners today will be good for specific YouTube videos that they can kind of follow. So let's make sure that we do that to help them out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you want to follow our YouTube page, we link all the podcast episodes there. Sky's the Limit podcast. We do how-to videos. We run numbers. Anything real estate related.
Yeah.
So
good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. This was helpful.
Anytime.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. So just remember, sky's the limit. Dive deep and invest in how you want to live.
See you next time.